Hey again everyone. This is going to be a bit of a summary of my experience fine-tuning the Tortoise TTS model over the past few weeks. In the description, I've linked some of the demo and test videos and linked the video about setting up the tokenizer that I'm going to be using here. I'll be talking a little about some of the roadblocks and limitations, but also the training and generation parameters that can hopefully be used to achieve some great sounding output. First off, single speaker fine-tuning of Tortoise TTS works somewhat consistently, and it's a pretty quick process compared to fine-tuning some of the other TTS models. From my experience so far using multi-hour single-speaker datasets, the best sounding output with the quickest generation time seems to be found after only one epoch of training. So after only one exposure to the dataset, things seem to perform best. Also, further training seems to degrade performance, and the degradation is consistent and doesn't seem to improve from 2 epochs through 50. That's all assuming that we're talking about a multi-hour dataset here. Smaller datasets require many more epochs but will similarly degrade if overtrained. It seems like there's some critical point of number of steps where things take a downturn in quality, but it seems highly dependent on the dataset. Once the model's degraded after dozens of epochs, I quit training. They could still form words and sentences properly, but the audio was barely audible and very noisy. Much like Slashdot.org adopted Libraries of Congress as its standard unit of measure, I'm going to call upon a higher power here, and I'll be using the New Testament as an SI unit. An audiobook reading of the New Testament, that is. So however long that is, whatever the phoneme distribution is, that's what I've used to train the base model here. So 1 New Testament's worth of speech data. Took 1 epoch to produce the voice here.
Us girls, we are so magical. Soft skin, red lips, so kissable. Hard to resist, so touchable. Too good to deny. Ain't no big deal, it's innocent. I kissed a girl, and I liked it. The taste of her cherry chapstick. I kissed a girl just to try it. I hope my boyfriend don't mind it. It felt so wrong. It felt so right. Don't mean I'm in love tonight. I kissed a girl, and I liked it. I liked it.
At 2 epochs, the audio was much lower quality, and continued to degrade over time. This seems consistent when training in other languages as well, using the character map tokenizer that I posted in the past video. Using a similar sized dataset and matching generation parameters, similar single voice output was achieved in Spanish, French, and Portuguese. I'd like to do a run of German, but I don't have the available disk space and can't really afford Google Colab anymore. The tests were run using the regular auto-regressive checkpoint, and the training parameters that perform best on my system were as follows. I used a learning rate of 1e-5 and set the strategy to cosine annealing with 2 restarts, simply because this value keeps the WebUI from throwing an error. I want a smooth decrease in the learning rate, not some big steps down. The mel learning rate ratio was set to 1, and the text learning rate ratio was also set to 1. Smaller batches seem to perform better than larger, and good runs were achieved using batch size of 16 and a grad accumulation of 4, but this could be dependent on my environment or hardware. In fact, I think the best sounding performance I achieved was with a random throw things at the wall test with a batch size of 2, but I don't really feel like repeating it because I can't really spare the GPU time. I had this trained for 10 epochs, but the best checkpoint by far was the first after only 1 epoch. The best sounding checkpoints also have the lowest generation time. Poor quality models seem to take between 2 and 10 times longer at the generate autoregressive sample stage. With a well-tuned single-speaker voice using highly tuned inference settings, it looks like I can get down to about 4 to 6 times real time, depending on the sentence. Complex sentences with a lot of punctuation, especially commas, will take longer to generate. In terms of generation, to get the best quality output for long passages of text, you may want to split them up in the text entry box by placing them on separate lines, and each natural sentence fragment with either a comma or a space as it would normally be transcribed. The WebUI will take care of stitching the segments together into one file. You can keep each sentence fragment saved by unchecking the Delete Intermediary Files box under the Settings tab. This is helpful if you need to regenerate a few words or a segment. The original file can be opened in a wave editor like Waveshop, and the bad segment replaced. In regard to multi-speaker training, I really wouldn't bother attempting it at this point. From the sounds of things, it's not just me that was having difficulty targeting the desired speaking voice at generation time. You can generate great sounding speech, but it's going to be a random sentence from a random speaker. Only after extensively training the model to the point where voices begin to degrade can you actually target a speaker in the multi-speaker setting, but it may not be the one you wanted. For example, there are more than 30 speakers trained into the model that I used to generate the G-Man voice demo.
For my military knowledge, though I'm plucky and adventury, has only been brought down to the beginning of the century, but still in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral. I am the very model of a modern Major General.
However, only 2 male voices can be targeted somewhat consistently, and I think there's only 1 female voice that comes through, and it appears to be an amalgamation of 2 other voices. I've tried many different concoctions of layered training, where I fully train each individual voice, tried methods where I supplement the dataset continuously with new voices while still keeping the old data, and everything in between. There is no magic combination of learning rates, batch sizes, and generation parameters that could make it work. I'd suggest just saving yourself the headache and fine-tuning models for each speaker. Once the base language is established, fine-tuning using a smaller dataset for a particular speaker is very quick. I'm going to link a comment from someone that stumbled across one of the Tortoise TTS videos that I posted that details some of the technical issues behind why the multi-speaker training isn't working well. And I'll also link to a post on the AI Voice Cloning WebUI discussion board if you want to read a little more about it. With that said, I still think this is an incredible TTS model. The performance is terrible, sure, and the output can be error-prone and inconsistent. But when it works really well and captures some lifelike charm that seems to be missing from other TTS models. Plus, the WebUI is great and makes twiddling knobs that can tweak the output really easy. If you fine-tune a model and lower the sample rate to 2 and raise the iteration slider to say 50 or above, you get some incredible output with generation times that won't make you want to pull out your hair. The WebUI will attempt to use all of the samples in the dataset directory to calculate latents. So if you have a large dataset, this will be too many samples. To make a subset, make a backup directory and move the dataset and metadata files there. Navigate to the dataset samples and find the segment files with the numbers at the end. Make a new directory under the voices folder with the voice name and copy the segments there. To use the checkpoint for generation, you can just select it from the drop-down in the settings menu. You may need to restart the WebUI before generating latents. It seems to crash in my system if I don't restart after changing models. The WebUI moves models between runs to manage checkpoints and logs. To use your fine-tuned checkpoint as a base for training other runs, you'll need to copy the checkpoint to the permanent models folder. It's found under models/fine-tunes. You may encounter a quirk where the model won't appear in the training menu until you restart the WebUI and reload the browser after copying it. When fine-tuning on smaller datasets of around 1 hour, I typically stop training after a stable minimum has been reached from one epoch to the next. You'll probably need to watch the graphs to see where to stop things. It could be after 1 epoch, or 3, or 10. At this point it will all really depend on how things are handling the data, and every situation is individual. For fine-tuning on datasets of around 1 hour, I didn't notice much of a difference between learning rate schedules. I typically keep batch size parameters for fine-tuning on smaller datasets the same, with batch size 16 and gradient accumulation set to 4. What I do adjust is the ratio. I keep the male learning rate ratio at 1, but will lower the text learning rate ratio to 0.1. However, if things are decreasing too sharply, decrease the text learning rate ratio to 0.01. I was trying to keep this one a little shorter, so I guess I'll just wrap up the video here. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, please leave a comment and hit the like button or subscribe. And a special thank you to everyone that shared the videos in Discord groups